Hi there. Welcome to Cold Turkey Podcast. This week I'm with Sinead. It was an enjoyed and appreciated every minute ride with Sinead, and I don't want to say too much. I just want for you listeners to have just enjoy every minute of it as I did. I'm going to finish up by telling you, as I do pretty much every week, but get the podcast known to your friends, to your family. Share the podcast link. I started feeding more of the YouTube channel. I'm adding the kind of the visualization transformation of the audio. The podcast is exclusively in audio, but I do use a product called Headliner, which does like a little visual out of my audio episode. So I do share some snippets on Instagram. I do have a Facebook page as well. So, every subscription is appreciated. And so I started feeding my YouTube page, so you can go take a look and subscribe. And so, without further ado, here's Sinead. Enjoy. Hey, Sinead, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. That podcast journey is actually just, and we were just talking about it, but for me, it's just, it's like a jolt of caffeine. I was kind of sluggish a few minutes earlier, but now I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm good. Let's go.
You pressed your jingle and now you're ready to go.
Exactly. I think that music just wakes me up. The first question I'm going to ask you is pretty much like a twofold question. The first one is, where are you located? And, what is how is the pandemic doing for you? For a lot of my guests, since this all, kind of shit in the storm, people have reacted and, have been impacted differently based on their location, but, the pretty much like the reaction of the public and health, authorities, either assigning the whatever, meetings or, gathering as essential services or not. And then, the impact that, being remote or through Zoom has had for, meeting with people. And so, it's pretty much my question, how has the pandemic has impacted you?
Well, it was pretty tough for me at first. So right now I'm located in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. And before the pandemic happened, I was actually living in the Caribbean. I owned a tattoo shop over there, and I moved there in 2018. So when the pandemic hit, and Trudeau was asking Canadians to come back, I was like, I'm just going to ride this out and see what happens. And I rode it out all the way back home. So,
wow.
Yeah, I had to leave the Caribbean to come back to Canada. But I mean, it could be worse. I think, I dealt with COVID and that beginning uncertainty in a very isolated place. So that was a little bit tricky to navigate, but now that I'm back home and in Canada, I feel very happy because we have a lot of opportunity here. We have great healthcare, and I have my family and friends. So, I mean, what more do you need,
And how is the place where your business is located doing? Are they impacted hard by the pandemic itself, or?
Well, it was pretty wild because at first, because it was such a small island, we didn't have any cases and the whole place was locked down. We didn't have any tourism coming in. So for about 3 months, there were no flights coming in and the whole island was, pretty much in lockdown. Like we weren't allowed to go to beaches. We weren't allowed to have public gatherings. And because it's like a bunch of roundabouts there, you always got stopped by the police. So it was truly like a real lockdown when you think about a lockdown,
Yeah.
I know in Canada or other countries that, you're still able to order pizza or like go to the grocery store and that kind of thing. And, maybe even visit friends or family, but there it was pretty strict. Since I left, they did open their borders up to the United States, and cases did skyrocket. So as of right now, I'm not really sure what's going on there, but I do know I'm glad I got out when I did.
Yeah, that's nuts. I mean, I have, we have close friends that are in Haiti right now, and
oh my goodness.
Yeah, and they actually live there, like so for them, like they're lucky enough to be kind of in the privileged one, like so they can like spare like some of the visits to the grocery store and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like they do share a news clip of like kind of like like you said, like the skyrocketing of cases, and like that. There's a lot of teaching and like kind of like getting people to understand like what it means to like, and the propagation of it all, and it's just crazy, like so. And as you said, like they don't necessarily have the infrastructure for healthcare that we do have.
Exactly.
And at the same time, like 8 months, 9 months in, you start to wonder, like what's that balance, and where's the fine line between body health and mental health, so where does it counterbalance? And I say that where I met with my family doctor like a few weeks ago, and I was telling him that I planned on going on vacation in January, and he was like, well, you're in good health. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, in some cases, I definitely wouldn't recommend it. But he said, and I said, well, it's not about if I can stand having that tough flu. It's about, like my mental health, like I need a fucking break, like, so.
Yeah. Where are you going to go?
Well, that's the main problem. I was initially scheduled to go in La Martinique, and my flight carrier has changed his flight schedule completely, and so I had to cancel my Airbnb there. So I did that today, and like now we're wondering where we're gonna go. There was a like great news article about some of our local newspaper that like flew to Cancun, for example, and like explained that with all of the security measures and hygiene measures that they're taking, it's it's pretty safe. We have a young kid, so you won't find me in a bar at 2 a.m. For multiple reasons, one of them being that I have a kid.
Yeah. Well, honestly, traveling right now, like flying back from the Caribbean in July, was like the most efficient, cleanest travel I've ever experienced in my life. So not that I'm telling everybody to go travel, but like now's the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, no lineups, everything's so clean. Like
hotels are empty.
Wash your hands.
Like the occupancy is very, very, very low. Prices are fantastic for high rated places. So, like we're still thinking about it, but, like one thing for sure is that, like it comes a point where you say, well, like we're in great health, like I don't see how it would, like buckle our knees, like catching that, even though, like that's, it's probably the funniest part is that I'd say a month prior to all of that thing hitting everyone, my wife and I most probably got it. Based on, like after that, like when you read the list of symptoms, we're, I would say 90% sure that, like we had it, I would say about 3-4 weeks before it got super public.
Interesting. You're not the first person that's told me that either. My friend said the same thing, that she thinks she had it in March, before things really popped off. But,
exactly.
I mean, everyone's eventually going to get it. I know several people who tested positive and had symptoms for it, and
Yep.
I don't want to get sick, but you do have to, live your life.
Exactly. And, I mean, it's a bad flu. And, like the loss of, the sense of smell and, like the taste, it was so weird, because I don't know if you know about Pied de Cochon, which is like one of the great restaurants of, of actually in the world. And they do have a sugar shack during the winter time, and so it's like a 14 course meal, and it's just fucking decadent, it's crazy. So every year, you need to put yourself on like a reservation list, and well, funny enough, our couple from IT flew down in Montreal, which they pretty much do every once a year. And so they came with us there. And that day I was super sick, but at the same time, these people flew from down from IT, so I couldn't just like say, hey, I'm too sick and whatever. So, I found all of my courage and said, well, I'm going to just suck it up and go down there. Oddly enough, between, all during the, all of the servings of the courses, I was like, well, it's not quite tasty this year. That's weird. Usually the food is just like exquisitely tasty and great. And it doesn't taste much, it's weird. And a few weeks,
because you couldn't taste because you had COVID.
Exactly. And so my wife was like, wow, you look like really, really down. And then she got it. And she's asthmatic. So, she got it hard, much tougher than I did. And she was like super sick. And she was like, holy cow, that's probably one of the toughest flu I never caught. I'm like, okay, well, and so we both got better, and the couple that flew back wrote us and said, have you, how sick have you got? I said, well, it was a tough one. And that was before, all of the pandemic talk. And so they were like, well, the husband didn't get it so tough, but the wife got it really bad. And we're like, okay. And they had their child, which are 20 something, and they were coming, they came to the dinner as well. And so both of the kids were really, really sick. I was like, well, okay. And then eventually when, all of that thing grew, I found a New York Times article that said that in January, there was kind of an explosion of cases of like a weird flu that they couldn't identify at the time in New York hospitals, and realizes post that it probably was like one first small wave of COVID cases. And it could have, and potentially could have moved like up north and some other areas, because New York is such a central place. And yeah, so I sent the article to, that couple, and right there, they just responded, holy shit, that's what we thought, I'm like, it looks like it, it very, very kind of looked like it. And so, but that said, even my family doctor always said, yeah, but there's there's some, mutation, and you never know. And I'm like, okay, I not that I want to take any risk, but, we've been what they call the second wave here in Quebec. We've been stuck at not doing much. And I mean, restaurant closed and everything closed since October 1st. So it's going to be 2 months by the end of November. And they're already kind of preparing us in not seeing much of December neither. So that's a lot.
Gosh. Yeah, they said that we might go into the red zone, and I don't know what that means, but I'm not looking forward to it.
No, that's just crazy. And so you're in a region actually that there was a lot of complaining, because Gatineau, which is like right next to the Ottawa border, is in red zone, and they can't do shit, and they just like cross the bridge and go to restaurants. in
Oh
Ottawa.
no,
Yeah, and so
shoot.
people are complaining about that. But anyway, as I do every week, I'm gonna ask you to just rewind the tape of your life story, and I pretty much want to bring you to like you're going to draw me a bit of a family picture or family portrait, but at the same time, either like the first time you do have like your first contact with substance, or I've had a lot of talk about like seeing substance use around you that has impacted you just as being witness of it all. So bring me back to that, like that time, either one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I always grew up around alcohol. My Nana and Papa both were heavy drinkers. And, my brother and I would spend summers with them. So, I never enjoyed whiskey or the smell of whiskey. And that's what my Papa always drank. But my Nana had wine. So I remember, she would make these spritzers, and I would always just kind of have a few spritzers, on low key, pretending it was like ginger ale, just so I could pretend I was more adult when I was like, I don't know, probably like 10 or 11. And then I remember grade 8, which is probably like 12 or 13. I invited friends over, and we snuck into my parents' liquor cabinet. And that was probably the first time I got very drunk. And I don't know, like I always, it's hard to describe, I guess, like many people, my roller coaster relationship with alcohol, because there were so many times where I enjoyed it and I had a great time and I was fine. But then there were way more times that I blacked out, or I don't remember, or I made a lot of mistakes or had a lot of regrets. But that was basically high school for me, was one long binge, to say it lightly. And yeah, I always, would write down or would think, what would my life be without alcohol? And I'd always try, different tactics to quit.
Already?
Yeah, like in high school when there was like New Year's resolutions and people would talk like that, or my birthday, for instance. Those are 2 times where I'd question alcohol and be like, maybe I could just like not drink it. Like, what would my life look like,
Wow,
but I never did anything about it. I just thought about it.
Yeah, but that's at the same time, that's surprising, because like there's like that's one of the questions that I routinely ask my guests, like, which is, when is the, like, when can you see kind of the first seed of wondering if, like, not using would change something in your life? But what you're telling me is that, like there was already those questions popping up in your mind. So, wow, that's surprising. Like that, like I haven't heard that much, like, so at the same time.
I was just curious because I was in a group, I was friends with everybody in high school, and there were different groups, right? And I was in it. Always was like partying and whatever, but then there was that group who was like excelling, and I was like, if I quit drinking, would I be happy being, at their level, or would I be more happy, enjoying myself and partying and doing whatever? And I always wondered if you could have that balance of being a successful person and still having fun. And I think that was something that I questioned for a long time in high school and in my 20s. Like, I'm in my 30s now. And yeah, I think it's a really difficult question to answer, because there's so many people out there, that can drink and keep it, at and I'm air quoting now, like, normal level. And, and I think when people do question that, I think that's the time where you should probably start questioning your relationship with alcohol,
Yeah. And at the same time, like it, one of the option to actually solve it, like, it's just to realize that, I strongly believe that I do have an obsessive compulsive gene, like, so, whatever I engage with, and my wife will kindly and lovely say passion, like I could like lack sleep of thinking about this thing, like, so when I fell, in love with alcohol and weed, and, like, it was just like, I knew so much about it, like I could, like doze, and, like there was always, a thought of, like I must not miss any of it, and, like, I need to be careful in my budget, because I, like I'm going to spend X amount to be sure that I don't get short of. And it was just like a fucking, obsession, like, so I was always thinking about, like, when's the next time I'm going to either roll myself one or drink myself one, like, it was just, but nowadays, if I get, like, even though, like, it was kind of, like, it was an amateur journey of, like, the podcasting thing, I became super, like, a connoisseur, like, because it became not an obsession, but, like a kind of that engagement and passion around it, like, it became super intense. And so, like, you kind of find the wisdom of not getting yourself sick about that passion. But when it falls into either prescribed drugs or alcohol or any kind of drug, I mean, obviously you're going to get sick around it, because, like, anytime if you push it, like, you're going to fuck yourself up actually. So the other question I have is, what was your relation with authority? Like, I usually ask that question, because the first contact with authority are the parents, and then eventually, like, the first external or foreign relation with authority is school. So what was your relation with all of it?
Did not like it. Like, I went to a Catholic school, and there was too much authority there, and I hated it. So, and I knew if I dropped out of high school, my parents would kick me out of the house, and I liked staying under their roof. So I ended up graduating earlier in order to avoid staying in high school for longer. But that's just, like, the type of person I am. I suppose I'm just, like, stubborn like that. But yeah, with the authority, I would say I never really, I had mentors and teachers that I appreciated, but when it came to people pushing rules or ideals that I didn't necessarily jive with, I definitely pushed back. I did get in trouble with the law while I was in high school as well. Again, like, underage drinking. I got caught public drinking. So all of that was, like, problematic for sure. So I wouldn't say I had the greatest relationship with authority, especially during my teen years. I've smartened up now.
and you talked about, like, being, like, placed, well, not placed, but, like, joining a Catholic school. What was, like, the household like? Like, was there a lot of authority? Was this, like, was it like a strict household?
Oh, it was so strict. Well, we had, my household was kind of strict, but not really. I think my parents worked a lot, to provide for my brother and I, but we also had babysitters that would, go against my dad's wishes. So I think that was always a bit of a struggle growing up. But going back to, like, the Catholic school, like, in high school, we'd have a commissioner, he was called, and he would walk around the high school and tell us, like, if our uniform wasn't tucked in, or, we weren't wearing the right shoes. And I just thought that was so silly. And I would always, like, argue with him and give him fake names. Like, it was so wildly inappropriate, though. He would say, like, my pants weren't, school pants. I'd be like, well, stop looking at my butt. I was just such a brat with him, but I can remember that vividly.
And you said that you finished high school earlier. Was there any, because it's probably one of the toughest time to be asked, like, what you're going to do with your life. Like I remember that was just a nightmare, because, like, I didn't even know what was my place in life, and then you know, and you're asked.
That's too much pressure for high school kids. I feel like they should stop that if they haven't already.
That's crazy.
But yeah, I remember. Well, I definitely loved film. So at that time, I was actually working background and doing like extra work in movies and stuff, and I really enjoyed that. So I thought that I was going to do that, but then I tried film school and I realized it wasn't for me. But in high school, yeah, I always wanted to be in the arts. So I'm a tattoo artist now. So that's kind of where that went. And while we're on the topic of graduating early, I actually did all of the schooling that I was supposed to do in my art class because I had done all of my art assignments early. So my art teacher would let me sit in art class and do like my English, you know, my grade 12 English, because I had done all my other assignments. So I had it going on. Like, even though I was, you know, a fucked up kid, I had goals and I pursued those goals.
Which is, you know, like a lot of the people that I talk to, you know, like are actually gifted, you know, like that there is something, you know, and we're if we can get by and you know, like either in lying and manipulating so many people around us, you know, like especially around our substance abuse, it, you know, like it definitely needs some kind of street and you know, like intelligence, you know, like you know, like there's something about us that, you know, like we navigate through life in such a way that, you know, like well, first of all, you know, like we usually live kind of a double life, you know, like where that drunk, passed out, fucked up kid has to go through, as you say, you know, like super strict environment, and, you know, like you need to look almost your best, but at the same time, you know, you can get wasted and pass out somewhere. And so, yeah, you know, like a lot of the people that I talk to, you know, like are actually gifted, you know, like we're smart, you know, so,
yeah. Too smart for our own good.
almost, yeah. And it makes us, you know, like, especially in the creative, it's incredible, you know, like we can freestyle and lie our ass out of any kind of problems. And
well, I think it's also like what a lot of creative people think that those substances make them more creative, you know, and they think that they need that in order to do X, Y, and Z. You know, there's comedians who feel like they need to drink or do cocaine so they have the energy and the charisma so they go on stage, you know.
Have you believed that for a while?
Paint and, like, you know, drink wine while they're painting because they think that makes them more fluid. But you know, that was my thing, was I would drink a bottle of wine every night and I would draw or paint, and then the next morning I would hate it. Yeah. And I just never understood like why I thought that I was so talented and gifted while I was drinking. You know, and like that was giving me my edge. But in reality, like I'd wake up the next day and be like, oh, that's garbage.
And so you did believe that for a while.
Oh, yeah. That was my thing for probably like 6 years, I would say, like every single night. Yeah.
And so you said that you did venture a bit, you know, like with the, you know, like dramatic arts and movie thing in college. Was there, you know, like any changes of program or anything, you know, like what led you to tattoo?
Yeah, well, I felt like there were too many moving parts in the film industry, and I am more of an introvert than an extrovert. I'm an extrovert when I drink. I'm more of an introvert. And I think that also led to why I did drink a lot. But yeah, I think I just wanted something that was a little bit more intimate in my creative approach. I like drawing for one person and having clients. And for me, that just made more sense. And when I was in film school, I was doing all like the art direction, the background painting, the storyboarding, and everybody was like, why aren't you an artist? And I was like, well, I don't like computers, because I thought I was just going to be a graphic artist or an animator or something. And then I ended up getting a tattoo, and I was like, wait a minute, I think this is for me. So so I got a tattoo, and then I ended up working counter at a tattoo shop, and I was probably like 18 or 19 then. And it was like 2 or 3 years before I could get an apprenticeship. But yeah, I gotta say, if you have drinking or drug problems, a tattoo industry is a slippery slope. So that definitely propelled me in the wrong direction, in regards to like, drugs and alcohol. That's for sure. I definitely found myself in a lot of sticky situations.
Can you elaborate on that, Sinead?
Yeah, like, oh man, I don't know. I've seen people do terrible things for drugs, and I've seen people do stupid shit while they were drinking.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally I guess you could say I'm lucky. I just never really enjoyed doing drugs that much. So, I never really had a problem with saying no to cocaine or anything else. My thing was just always drinking. So, I mean, I could tell you so many stories. I don't even know. I don't even know where to begin. The tattoo industry is just full of interesting people. But you'll have to wait until I release a book. How's that?
Yeah. Oh, well, that's perfect. That's product placement, Sinead.
Right.
I'm proud of you.
Oh my God. I know. I go through like a card catalog of all these crazy stories, and I just like can't believe it most of the time. But yeah.
But is it the proximity?
It's funny, I work in a tattoo shop, and everybody in the shop, 95% of us are all sober. So we call ourselves like retired shitheads because none of us drink alcohol.
But is it the proximity to kind of the criminal world? Because like the tattoo industry has changed so much in the past decade.
Oh my God, so much. And like I've been in it for 15 years, and like 15 years ago, I worked at a biker shop, and that's probably where like all my crazy stories come from. But yeah, like the everything has changed since it went on television. I'll tell you that much. Like I've seen it since before it had reality shows, and now after, and it's a completely different circus.
Yeah, and it got quote unquote much cleaner, right? Like I mean,
I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was marginalized for so many years, and yeah, I mean, like even my own dad, like not that he wants a tattoo, but like he would have, like almost tell me that he would rip my arm out, like if I ever got ink on me, and
you know what? My mom still doesn't like my tattoos. I got a huge tattoo for her, and I asked her if she wanted to see it, and she still says no. But I'd go to the malls with her at the beginning of like my career with my tattoos, and people would compliment me all the time when I was around her, and I'd be like, see mom, I'm like a walking billboard. And even to this day, she's still like me whenever I get a new tattoo. So I feel like parents who believe that, like it just stays with them. Even though I've even tattooed my mom. I like tattooed my mom like 4 years ago. And wow. She still doesn't care about my tattoos. So I feel like sometimes with parents, they just don't change.
Yeah, I mean, like, and my guess is that, like they probably still see us in our diapers, and, I can't imagine that, we're actually quote unquote messing our body up, like, so, like.
Exactly. And then I'm like, Mom, I could be messing my body up on alcohol and drugs, but I'm putting pretty art on it now. So, exactly. I mean, take what you can get.
Yeah. So bring me back to that, like you talked about, like going downhill on a slippery slope, like, where, like to what end does that slope brings you?
Yeah, well, I think I was kind of sick of it, like I think I was just I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was working in an environment that was a bit toxic at the time, and I was actually seeing like what was going to happen to me in the future if I didn't like start cleaning up my act. I was starting to feel depressed, and I wasn't really feeling good about the work I was doing. And so, yeah, so I thought I was like, I'll just try, quitting alcohol for 30 days. And up until that point, I'd never quit alcohol for more than like maybe a week. So like the idea of 30 days was a lot. And I ended up, the first time I kind of quit for those 30 days was in June. And like, Canadian weather, June, July, that's like patio season. That's like the time everybody's getting out and excited about the summer. So
the worst time. Like, the worst time.
Sorry?
Yeah. The worst time.
Exactly. So it's like if I could quit during like the best/worst time of the year, then I could, then I can quit forever. So that first 30 days, I didn't even like leave my house. I didn't do anything but just like paint and draw and kind of like do the things that I love doing, but like without alcohol. Cause like I said, like I drank a bottle of wine every night, painting and drawing for my tattoos the next day. So I just started with that. And I replaced, like, I'm sure a lot of people do this. You just replace alcohol with something else. So I ended up getting like all these boxes of drumsticks, like those ice cream cones, you know?
Yep.
And I replaced alcohol with ice cream for like the first 2 weeks. And then I started getting sick of ice cream, and I was like, damn, I wish like I could get sick of alcohol the way I got sick of ice cream so fast, you know? And then, so after 30 days, I realized, you know, I still, like, even though that was an accomplishment, I still didn't feel confident enough to go out in public and like be around people who were drinking. So that's when I really started doing more research and looking into, you know, self-help books and just kind of changing my mindset. I had a friend who was going to AA, and she did invite me to go to a meeting. And I personally just didn't feel aligned with AA, and I didn't end up going. I just, for me, it's like I didn't want to sit around and talk about the thing that we weren't doing. I kind of wanted to just like distract myself, you know? So I didn't, and because I feel like, you know, a privileged white girl from the suburbs, I didn't want to hear everybody's story and compare my story with theirs. And I felt like that's what I was going to do. I would go there and I would hear all these really sad stories and be like, well, that's not my situation. You know, like I'm not that bad, but we should never be comparing ourselves to other people when it comes to recovery. That's a big lesson I had to learn. And when I quit, all the times that I've quit. So then I did 60 days, and then I finally went to a party, and I got called out at the party. And I felt labeled. I felt like an alcoholic, and I really never wanted to use that term in regards to myself. And so again, I had to like go down and do some more deep dives and do some self-discovery and read more books and listen to more podcasts and do a lot of journaling. And then I ended up getting to a year of sobriety, and I was like, okay, I'm healed. I can drink again. And I'll never forget having that first drink and just feeling that serotonin and that warmth in my body and being like, oh my God, like this is what I missed out on. And then getting drunk and feeling like the worst I've ever felt in my life the next day, you know, like just, I was so disappointed with myself, and I was just, like still even thinking about it. Cause I go back to that time and be like, if I had just not, if I had just kept going, you know, if I never had that drink, like I would have been sober for so much longer, you know, but I think I needed to have that drink to remind myself again, oh, this is why you don't do this anymore. And I think that's what happens to a lot of people when they first, you know, are sober curious. They think that they're fine and that everything's good. And then they have that drink again, and they kind of go down that slippery slope again. And then it was like 3 years of on and off the wagon, of quitting for 3 months, quitting for 6 months, drinking again for whatever reason. But safe to say, I feel the best I ever have, because I finally feel like I've overcome the hurdle in my mind of why I don't drink. I kind of found my why, you know?
Yeah. And why is it?
For me, it's just for peace of mind. You know, it took a while for me to realize that when you put rules and regulations, kind of going back to like that whole authority thing that we were talking about earlier, on your drinking, it's like this whole conversation that you have in your head and you can't really enjoy yourself, you know? Like, I'm only going to have one glass of wine, or I'm only going to drink when I celebrate, or I'm only going to have drinks on the weekends. Like, even putting all those rules on myself didn't feel good, you know? And it's like, at the end of the day, the freedom that I get from just simply saying no and not even having that be a part of my life is so much more rewarding and uplifting and and such a relief because I don't even have to worry about it anymore. It's not an issue.
And it's actually a feeling of like trying to cut down. It's funny because in Quebec, the only public funded, and I mean government funded therapy that are offered are actually those that they say are in French they call that réduction des méfaits, which would be like reducing misbehaviors, and so they encourage some kind of reasonable consumption of substance. Which for me is just having almost like a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, and like checking the box of, oh, I've had my third drink today, so I shouldn't drink. Like, and you just said it best. Like there is something around. There's a AA saying that's one is too many and 1,000 not enough. I was pretty much built that way, like if I had, I can, and, like you talked about ice cream, and it made me think that I've done once eating too many candies and got sick of eating too many candies, and they were whatever they were, like Skittles or whatever, like just picking in the bag and I've been with my wife for 12 years now. And, she can, like sometimes she can see me, like especially with food, just like, oh, like like you've opened the gate, I'm like, I'm, like I can't stop being hungry, like I'm, and, like I realized that, like this is, like it's probably running in my blood, like I need to be careful all the time, like so so it becomes a black and white situation. It's not about, like one drink and I'm good. If I get that first drink, 1,000 won't be enough.
Right.
And it becomes kind of a, like almost like house of the crazies, like it just, you can't live like that.
I think the ultimate thing in life too is balance, right? And I think when we do abuse anything, ice cream, cookies, whatever, it just ruins it and it tarnishes it. But for some reason, when it comes to alcohol, it's just poison. There is no nutrients, there's nothing beneficial from it. It just literally is tarnishing our body. So
because it is poison.
Just like it's ethanol, right? Like to just change that mindset too, right? Like I'm literally getting no nutrients. There's nothing that's benefiting me from this. So why am I doing this to myself? Like out of self-hate than self-love. Because if I truly had self-love for myself, I wouldn't be putting that shit in my body, And I think that's something that, with my coaching clients, that I try to just reframe your attitude towards what this is, because it's given to us and marketed to us as this like magic elixir that's going to solve all our problems, when in reality it causes all of them.
Well, you said it best, like why would you, like what's the difference between eating too many cookies and, drinking alcohol? Is that alcohol at the end of the day, it can actually fucking kill you. I mean, the cookie can, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, like, like if you eat too many,
the cookie death is much slower than the alcohol death.
Suicide by cookie eating is much rarer, like you see that less. But
I mean, it's that in itself, food addiction is a problem as well. And I feel
big
so
time
sad for people who do struggle with food, because again, it's, I don't want to say it's the same, but it is similar to alcohol, where it is marketed. You need food to live. So where's that balance, right? Where it's like, at least with alcohol, you can just say no, like get it out of here.
And utmost respect to, like the people that, that overcomes those problems. And, like, it's funny because, not funny, but, like it made me think a lot today, because I've actually scheduled for someone that's going to talk to me about, gambling problems.
Interesting.
In the next few weeks. And for me, like that's one of the, as food addiction is one of the scariest one, because like you're actually doing this out, like you're doing this cold, like there's nothing that actually messes up your mind. So both gambling and eating even worse, because, like, as you said, like you need to eat to live, like if if you don't eat, you're going to die. And so finding that balance is, like a kind of almost like, it's walking a thin line of, like knowing yourself to a point of, like utmost precision, like it's, and it's, and that makes me think of, like the first few months I used to have like a card game at home, which I would get, like just blasted in any shape or form. But I had a card game with, like at least four buddies of mine that were close friends. And for the first few months, I didn't want to play because, like I was told in therapy that, like anything could be almost an excuse to, like, and so gambling was something that, like I needed to be careful about. And I eventually, like missed the game so much. And, I kind of knew that, like I since it was at cold, like I had to be super careful around it. And so there were two occasions where, like I initiated a first game at home, and I felt that switch, like kind of that tilting switch. I was like, holy shit, okay, that's what it is. And decided to, like we wouldn't play, because not that we played big money, but, like I had to be careful about that. And so we then played at some place outside. And I remember, because it was so cold out, and I lost like that $20 that I played and wanted to buy myself back. And while I was putting my coat on to find an ATM, I realized that, like it was the switch, like kind of that tilting switch again. And I was like, okay, I need to go home. Like that's going to be hit. And, like if I do get that, like kind of, like that switch tilted, like I need to just go home and forget about it. And it's funny because, like 15 years later, I still play with these friends, and, like we tend to play board games more than anything. And, like we play less and less cards, and it came naturally, like it was nothing that, like it was because, like we, like any of us, it was just like, okay, like it got boring, and, like we decided to play something else. And the other occasion that, like it happened in kind of knowing yourself and, like identifying very early on, I was asked by a friend that's a musician to go to a bar because, like they were actually kind of showcasing. So they knew that they were managers and eventually record label assisting and, like being present there. And so that guy I knew from, like very, like for a long time. And so he asked me to go and, like just watch their showcase. And so I sit at the bar and kind of, like introduce myself to the bartender and say, well, my name's Alex. What's yours? My name's Mike. Hey, hi, Mike. I don't drink, so don't serve me alcohol. And the guy was like, well, what the fuck? Like, and so
like, why are you sitting at my bar?
Exactly. So I asked for a sparkling water, and an hour or 45 minutes in, I had drink 6 sparkling water. And so sure enough, like I had to go pee, and, like, so I go to the bathroom and realizes that, like that switch was, like it tilted. And I was like, okay, the only thing that's going to happen tonight is that, like I'm going to get broke buying sparkling water because it's like 10 times the price. And I'm going to, I'm just going to pee, like I'm not going to get a buzz out of that, like, so just wake the fuck up, Alex, like just, like get back on track and, like slow down on your drinking the sparkly water and you're going to be okay. Like, so
yeah, you should be burping all night too.
Exactly. And so it was just, as time went, I had to know myself enough, and coming back to, like food disorder or, like, or game, like the, gambling disorder, like they don't have much time in finding, or knowing themselves enough to identify that.
Well, that's what it is. And I think that's what the problem is with with society essentially is the lack of mindfulness and the lack of self-awareness. I think, if we all kind of took a step back and thought about things before we followed through, understood the root of why we do the things that we do, we would be a lot more free, I want to say. Maybe not necessarily happy, because I think it does take a lot of work to be self-aware and to do the work on yourself.
Yep.
But it is so rewarding, it's some days are a lot harder than others, but it is so rewarding to be able to catch yourself in those moments, like while you're putting your jacket on and stopping yourself from doing something that, your future self wouldn't be happy about. And I think that's like the whole struggle that people find themselves with addiction and with recovery is kind of like silencing your inner critic, or being, stronger than the little devil on your shoulder, and finding your why, because, there are going to be so many times where that why might not be strong enough, or your excuses just might be, a little bit too prominent. But to have that self-awareness to know, if I do this is the outcome. Let's take a step back. Let's take 20 minutes. Let's take a few breaths, whatever it is to stop you from making a bad decision. And I think if more people practice mindfulness and self-awareness, we would have a better world.
And the other thing, there's two things that comes into my mind. The first thing is, a great lesson that, I've learned through, the anonymous literature is you get more by giving it back. For instance, that podcast is my way of giving it back, and it gives me more. It actually gives back more than what it is for me to give it out. Sure enough, it's a lot of work, but what it brings me is crazy. There's no word that describes the good that it does to me.
I feel the same way. Like I do coaching for that reason. I don't do it to make money. I do it to help people and to be that sober friend that I never had, and getting on a call with somebody for 30 minutes and just working out those little brain kinks, that's making them drink, or having a complete stranger give them a different perspective. Like that's so much more rewarding to me by giving back in this community as well. So I totally feel you on that. That's something I'll agree with AA.
Yeah, and the other thing is that recently one of my wife's closest friend has died of cancer at 40 years old, and that was like 2 weeks ago. I'm so
sorry to hear that.
And it's the second time in my life. I think it was 10 years ago. It was my stepdad, my father-in-law girlfriend, that a few months short of her taking her pension from something like working for the same place for over 30 years, I think.
Oh my God.
Got lung cancer, and sure enough, she was a smoker, the usual story, right? Everyone, but at the time it had hit me so hard because I was like, holy shit, all of the, she didn't have a lot of planification of, okay, now's the time, in a few months to, to kick the bucket list and, to get things moving and all that. But, they had plans, they were like a few months short of starting to, do some stuff. And next thing you know, they get the diagnosis and, she died within a year, it was just crazy.
Heartbreaking.
That at the time for me was kind of my way of cut on the smoking and eventually starting to get back in shape, so I started running, doing like obstacle course and Spartan races and all that. And that was like almost 10 years ago. And then, and then almost like in short time, like my wife's friends got her first diagnosis of, like some lymphoma, and it, like it eventually grew to her brain, and like it was just horrible, like just like tragic story. And but she was 40 years old, like, and so it's the second time that, like it makes me think about, how very little time we got. I don't have time, like, so there's a lot of shit that, I used to kind of brew over and over and over, like thinking, like getting frustrated about, like what's this shit worth? Like so many things that, like I would just like bloat my brain around.
Yeah.
That, like those two stories made me I would say almost like backwash how much I would fill my brain with bullshit.
Yeah.
It
gave you like a clearer perspective on life and the value of life, right?
Yeah, and the value of everything, and you realize much quicker how much there's very little that has value at, like bottom line. Like human contact has value. Your family and close friends has value. But like I think about, like the generation we're in right now, which, like with like the selfies and like, I don't want to, like sound old, I'm 45 for God's sake, like, like, but what I'm saying is that, like there's really something that, like at some point you're like, fuck that, like I don't have time for that, like I don't have time for even like people that, like you talk with people that just brew the same shit over and over and over, and like it eats you alive, like, and so
stress is not good for your health either. It's just as bad, if anything worse. It shortens your lifespan, that's for sure.
It just eats you, like, and at some point it's just, okay. Even arguing with someone, like even fighting with someone, and then, like even close ones, like you're gonna argue about stupid shit, and it's like, okay, we don't have time, like we need to find every moment to enjoy it, like if we waste just a minute more of, like fighting over some stupid fucking argument, like why?
There's no point.
There's no point. And you never know, like you could be, like you like the best friend, like, and just don't really have time, like, so yeah, I mean, like it's for me, like those are lessons that, like it's weird how the human is, like how we're built, right? Like it seems like I needed that to realize that, like it's fucked up because, like no one needs that, like.
Well, that's the thing. I guess that is in like a terrible way of saying, in loss, we find value in things, like for instance, like this pandemic that we're in, like how much we need human connection and gatherings and socialization and all the things that have been taken away from us, even in this pandemic alone, that have given us more appreciation for the little things, seeing somebody's face, seeing them smile, for God's sakes, like, but
yet, Sinead, we've never seen as much fragmentation as right now, which is weird. Like for me, it's just, like hate on social media right now is just out of this world.
It's all feeding into it though, right? Like you were kind of saying before, for, the mental and physical health is all deteriorating as well, with our loss of gyms. And now we live in Canada, we won't be able to go outside, to go for a run or for a nice walk. We're going to have to bundle up. Like these are all little things that are, I think, piling on to the negativity of the world as well, right? You're isolating people and taking them away from human connection. We're all going to feel separated in some way.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier to attack people behind your computer and on social media.
Yeah. And it's scary because, like if people finds, like tries to find value, behind his desk and like in his computer screen, not only are they missing, but like they're building something that's just an empty shell of nothingness. Like it's just for me, like that, like I initially asked you the question about, like the impact of the pandemic, like that was probably, I was not like the biggest hugger and the biggest like but human contact, or, like feeling the human, kind of, like, I don't know, like I guess brainwave
connection, like you need that.
Yeah. And like I remember doing like the first few Zoom meetings of AA or whatever, and realizing that, oh shit, like it's not there. Like it's like a bunch of squares with people's face on, but it means nothing for me. Like it's not working. Like, and still, like I do, like I have something scheduled every Tuesday, and I have a hard time connecting, like, and I mean by that, like, which is odd because, like I'm obviously connected, but, like it's I get a better connection doing it one-on-one, even though we can't see each other's face. I find a better connection there than I do with 20 something people, like on like a full screen of people. It's tough, like it's still tough. And my wife is way more social than I am. But like we've been, we've pretty much rebelled against some of those rulings, because we needed it. Like, and like we had long talks about it, and I was like, well, yeah, like let's invite friends, and like not, like we're not filling the house full, but like we're gonna have a couple of friends and talk, and like get like click close, like and discuss, and like having talk just helps, so yeah.
I totally get it. It's a crazy time, man, and if people are out there and they're doing it sober, all the power to you. Cause like, this is some tough, so a tough year to navigate. And I just have to, give love to all the people who are even struggling too. It's not easy right now. That's for sure.
The one of the last questions I want to ask you is, how do you maintain, what's your sobriety diet? Like how,
oh my goodness. Well, I still love ice cream, so you always have to have a little bit of that. Yeah, I think when I first started quit alcohol was when I really started to get serious about my health. I ended up getting a trainer and getting more excited about eating healthy. So I kind of just stay on that. I'm interested in biohacking, but I'm really, I struggle with taking my supplements, like I love the idea of being very healthy. So I do try to constantly strive towards being my most optimal, healthy, clear-headed self. If I'm having a really bad day, I need to exercise. That's how I relieve depression and anxiety, and how I feel 100 times better is just moving my body for at least 20 minutes a day. If I'm in a funk, I go for a walk outside. I think going for walks, listening to podcasts, reading books, really just like self-care. I'm a big fan of self-care. And that's basically how I keep sober. Oh, and journaling. Oh my God. That is like my number one thing is journaling. I've been writing in a diary for like, I don't know how many years now. I want to say like 10 years. My mom's given me like the same diary every single year, and going back and reading how far I've come, or seeing goals that I've crushed like years later that I didn't even think was a thing in the back of my mind, is so uplifting and rewarding for me, because I get to physically see the progress. There's like working things out mentally and not writing it down, I think does you a disservice. I think writing stuff down gets it out of your system. Whatever you're struggling with, there's no judgment when you write it down on a piece of paper when it's for yourself. And I think to read that and to see that something that I was struggling with maybe 8 years ago, now I don't even think twice about. I know that that means I am leveling up and I'm progressing with my mental health. And when it comes to any sort of addiction, it's all a mental health game. And I think when you journal and you write stuff down and you get to see how far you've come, it's almost like a weight loss challenge or something, when you take a before picture and you don't actually see the progress until you take that after photo 6 months later, or you put on those jeans that don't fit you anymore. That's kind of like what writing in a journal is for your mental health. And I cannot stress enough how important it is to just write your thoughts out, get them out on paper, and what is it? What's the word I want to use? Basically digest your inner turmoil in that way.
Can you elaborate, Sinead, on that? How do you structure that? Because you're pretty much one of the first guests that kind of focus on the importance of journaling. Even though I know that a lot of people are doing it. Do you structure that, or it becomes kind of more of a personal diary? How do you?
Both, because I'm a subcontractor and I have clients. I think I started just by writing down a to-do list, and even a simple task like checking something off on a to-do list, even if it's as simple as flossing your teeth that day, or going to get groceries or doing your laundry, just checking that off gives you a little bit of a dopamine hit. It gives you that sense of okay, I feel accomplished, I did something today. I did something productive. That was good for me. So that's how it started for me. And then, if I was having, say, I was in a bad relationship, but I couldn't really see it. When you're in something, you don't really see the signs. So I would start writing stuff down, little things he would say that would upset me. And, I wasn't sure how to react, and I didn't want to get angry, or, I didn't want to tell him how I felt. So I would write it down. And then all of a sudden I started seeing patterns. And then I started writing stuff down, thoughts that I was having, maybe, negative thoughts I was having about myself. And again, seeing patterns. And that's, I guess, what the journaling does, is help you see the patterns, and that, this isn't maybe the first time you thought negatively about yourself. You've actually been doing this quite often, and that needs to change. So how are you going to change that? And writing down in your journal, I'm going to stop speaking negatively about myself. Instead, I'm going to say the opposite. I'm going to say how great I am in the mirror every day, and say those affirmations, because how you are speaking to yourself is how you are allowing other people to speak towards you. If you don't hold yourself with high esteem, no one else is going to either. So building that self-confidence by those little things of being, again, more self-aware is what journaling is going to help you do.
Yeah. I mean, this is, there's a lot of, there's a lot of literature that talk about, doing a daily inventory of yourself, just either in the morning or, at night, just, a daily inventory.
Well, there is, So there's so many ways to do things. And again, it's one of those things where you're just going to have to find something that works for you. There was one, I want to say it, there's one mindfulness activity that you can do. I used it for a little bit. It didn't really work for me, but I do keep it around, and it's basically a manifesto of your life, or of the life that you want to live. And it's been called the Upward Spiral Guide. We all have our downward spirals, but what's going to bring you up again, right? So this Upward Spiral Guide basically is you writing about yourself in the future. So if somebody were to write about you in 20 years from now, and what you've accomplished and the type of person you are, just write that down. And you're told that you're supposed to write it down and read it every morning or every night. You can even audio record it yourself, reading it to yourself. And that's supposed to go, it's supposed to be kind of subliminal messaging towards yourself, and kind of reading the goals that you want to attain that you've already attained in the future. That helped a little bit for me. I personally found it a little bit cheesy, but some people, it works for them, you know? And again, it's just like another kind of journaling tactic that you can use as positive self affirmations, you know? But there's been so many times where I've just like, you know, scribbled down like, I'm going to be a New York Times bestseller, or, you know, I would love to do talks in the future. I'd love to meet, you know, I've met Tony Robbins, like things like that. You know, it's fun to fantasize about those things and about what of all the potentials that you can accomplish, you know, and just reading that every day or talking to yourself like that every day is going to build that self-confidence.
Yeah. And for those that listen, don't spend money on The Secret, the book. Sinead just described it.
Yeah, that's basically
in a few sentences. Yeah. That's basically it. This visualization.
You can talk about it every day, but it's all about that follow through. And then again, that's where the journaling comes in. You know, it's like, cool. So you want to be a New York Times bestseller. Well, today you're going to write 10 pages of that book, you know, and it's about finding those goals and then breaking them down into like those micro steps. And then that's how you accomplish those things. But but if there's anything from this podcast that I hope to help anybody with, it's that journaling is the best thing that you can do for your mental health.
And it's visualization, you know, like it's you know, like it's the subtle difference between when we're going to get this and, you know, like, if we're going to get this.
I know, like it's about the feeling of already having that, right? Of fake it till you make it.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like, oh my God, you know, like fake it till you make it, you know, like please everyone remember that, you know, like it's such an important mojo, you know, like to live, you know, like with, you know, like it's just fake it till you make it.
Seriously, it's like even when I was like, you know, quitting alcohol, it's like I don't drink, I never drank, I don't like drinking, I don't even like the taste of alcohol, you know, whatever you have to say to yourself, it's gonna feel right eventually, even if it feels a little bit silly at first. It's just gonna it just all of a sudden becomes a habit. And I did have a vision board that I made like a little collage on my phone, and I kept that as my screensaver on my phone for a while too. And I definitely found that to be motivating, and like switching it up and making it a different collage all the time and getting new goals and tweaking things because, you know, we change, people evolve. Yep. Sometimes you want different things. I do think that there's a power to that as well through visualization and all of that.
And for those that listen, you know, like I'm probably the first one guilty of finding this super fucking cheesy. you know, like my wife has done. You talked about Tony Robbins. You know, like my wife has done NLP, right? You know, like she's like a fully certified in you know
neuro-linguistic programming. Oh yes,
exactly. And so, you know, like, you know, the visualization is super important. And, you know, like, we just did a visualization board for what we want as our new house. You know, like I was probably, you know, like I found it so I was like, and she stuck it. Yeah, fun. I know. And she stuck it on, you know, like the back on my door, probably knowing that, you know, like I would, you know, like it would be, you know, like I would be the first one to find it so cheesy. But, you know, like I found myself, you know, like shutting the door of my office down and, you know, like looking at the board, I'm like, yeah, you know, like I want that, you know, like I'm going to have that, you know, like, and so, you just need to take that first step in, and you know, like you realize soon enough that you know, like it for those that are for some nostalgia, you know, like you remind yourself of what you did when you got, you know, like any catalog and cutting for your Christmas gift, you know, like it was just like wishful thinking.
There's like a childlike, like whimsical, magical excitement about it. And I think if you can just open yourself up to those opportunities, like it is fun, and like not taking life so seriously. Like, you know, if you get to visualize something, like, well, that's why, you know, you go to a gym and they have motivational quotes or they have hot bodies like plastered on the walls. Like you need that visualization to get you to that goal, you know? So I think that is so important for people who want to go after something that they think that they can attain. Start by getting a magazine, cutting out some photos, making a little collage. And before you know it, like you're making a new collage and you're leveling up.
Craft yourself, your new self.
Yes. Yes. I love that. Yes, absolutely.
Last thing I'm going to ask you is, like, where can people find you? Are you, are you, sharing that, like, quote unquote wisdom and, like everything like that kind of, what you want to share of the journaling and, like you talked about.
I try to share as much, whimsical manifestation, life coachingness on my Instagram. So my Instagram is, my handle is Sinead Stewart. So SINEAD STEWART. And yeah, I try to share, as much as I can about my sober journey and help people along the way. I also do free 30-minute calls, for people who are struggling. They want to work something out and they're not really sure who to turn to. I'm always happy, to help anybody out with anything that they are struggling with. So
awesome.
That link is also on my Instagram. You can book a call with me there. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And so for everyone that listens, Sinead's going to be sharing with me all of the links and all of the contact information. So you can find them on the description below. And so, like no need to worries and taking notes, like you just scroll down and look at the description of the episode and everything's going to be there. So Sinead, I have, like, it's my pleasure to have, get to know you. It is, I'm having a blast doing it. Like I started by doing it, by saying
great.
it, but
this is
like,
awesome. This is so much fun. Thank you for having me, Alex. I think, your podcast is great and I love what you're doing. It's a great name too. Cold Turkey. Genius.
I know. It's struck by lightning in the middle of the night. And that name and image and sound, came just, like call it whatever, like it came from out there and just struck me. And I was like, I got it, like found my name.
Yes, that was the universe. So, I love those like moments of inspiration. It's the best.
It's crazy. Yeah. Can't explain it, but yeah, thanks a lot for your participation in that journey. Like I love it. And, like I appreciate every minute of it. So, I wish you all of the best. And, like you talked about, like being in the brainstorming process of, like writing a book. So I wish you all of the success of, like that book. And, it was quite an appreciated time.
Thank you, Alex. I really enjoyed myself too. Hopefully we'll talk again soon and you'll be in your new house.
I will. I will.
There we go.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.